In that little part of Blackbird, there are many great music ideas. You can think of a song as a creative collection of music ideas, and the purpose of this video is to introduce you to some of them. The approach to learning the song here is to understand the individual ideas first, and then combine them so that you really understand what you're doing as you play, rather than just memorizing where your fingers go. This video introduces you to the music ideas, but myguitarlessons.com takes you step by step through them, tracking your progress along the way. The first music idea that we're going to discuss is a two-note chord series. So Blackbird is in the key of G major, and for every key, there's a family of chords that belong together. So in the key of G major, the 1 chord is a G major chord. The 2 chord is an A minor chord. The 3 chord is a B minor chord. The 4 chord is a C chord. The 5 chord is a D chord. The 6 chord is an E minor chord. And the 7 chord is an F sharp diminished chord. And then we're back to the 1 chord, which is a G major chord. So instead of playing the full chord in Blackbird, you're just playing 2 notes. And these are called tenths because you have the root, or G note, in the first chord example, and the third, which is a B, but the third is not the B closest to the chord, it's an octave higher, so that's actually a tenth. If you count up the major scale, you can count from this G note to this B note, and you'll see that it's a tenth. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is a tenth. Instead of playing the full chord, you can play tenths as a series. So the 1 looks like that. The 2 looks like that. It's the 2 notes from the A minor chord. You can see if I put my hands there. So 2, the 3, these are 2 notes from the B minor chord. The 4, which is a C. 5, which is a D. 6, which is an E minor. 7, which is an F sharp diminished. And then back to the 1, which is a G. So you can hear the series. It sounds like a major scale. So in Blackbird, what you're doing is you're moving right up the series. So you're going from the 1 to the 2 to the 3, and then you skip all the way back up to the 1 again. The next music idea we're going to talk about is voices. So instead of thinking of chords, you can think of individual voices being played. The high voice sounds like this, and the lower voice sounds like this. But using those patterns of the chord series, you can play both at the same time. So even though 2 things are going on at once, it's patterns that you're thinking about, not trying to do 2 separate things simultaneously. In addition to those 2 voices, there's this G note, the open 3rd string, that is ringing pretty much throughout the song. And that's a drone note, a note that's just played over and over through the song. And the pattern that you play is you pinch the 10th, then you use your thumb to play the drone note. So you have a pattern, on your fretting hand as well as a pattern on your picking hand. You should be able to hear all 3 of the voices separately. And then that droning voice. You can actually play that drone note, which is a G note, which is the root of the key that we're in. You can play that with the entire series. in addition to those three voices, Paul McCartney is singing a relatively simple melody. So you can really think of four voices as going on as he's playing. So that is being played at the same time. All those other voices are being played. The next music idea we're going to talk about is the pinch and roll pattern that you hear in part of the song. And that sounds like this. And so what he's doing is he's holding down the notes from the 10th series. So but what he's doing is with his pinky, he's muting the first string so that it doesn't ring. And with his index finger, he's muting the fourth string. So those, he's just slightly touching them so they don't play. And what that allows you to do is kind of strum quite freely with your strumming hand, because the only notes that are ringing are the two notes from the 10th series as well as that drone G note. So it's a pinch and then a roll pattern. And the thumb is playing the 5th string on the beat, so you can actually count the beat as you're playing 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And instead of playing the notes cleanly, he's kind of strumming them with his index finger. So the thumb is still playing the bass note on the beat, but it's also helping with the strumming pattern. So it's a really clever way to play something that sounds quite complicated pretty easily. You can move your hand quite freely and still sound pretty good. So that's one of the tricks that Paul McCartney uses. I think of this as working with the guitar. He's in the key of G. He's using that open G string, using his fingers to mute them. So instead of trying to play something quite complicated, it becomes relatively easy to play. The next music idea we're going to discuss is counterpoint. And counterpoint can be thought of as two music ideas happening at the same time. So the counterpoint in Blackbird sounds like this. And you can think of this as going from the 4 chord in that series to another chord, to the 5 chord, to another chord, to the 6 chord. You can listen to the two voices. The low voice sounds like this. So basically the bass voice, the low voice, is going up the fretboard chromatically. And then the higher voice sounds like this. So it's a melody that is playing around the major scale, ending on the G note, which is the root of the key that we're playing. So both things are going on at the same time. It seems quite complicated to think about them individually, but as a player, what you're really thinking about are the patterns. And the pattern is the normal 10th, then that other chord, then the normal 10th, then the other chord, then the normal 10th from the series. So in addition to those two voices, he rings that drone G note. The next music idea that we're going to talk about is chord substitution. So in the counterpoint, we saw that there's these other chords added to the notes from the two-note series. So the other chords, if you look at the full chord, this is a C major chord. The next chord can be thought of as this chord, which is a C sharp diminished 7 chord. So you can think of that as a chord in between the C chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. But instead of playing the full chord, only 2 notes are played from the chord, which is actually easier to play than the full chord. So 4 chord, sharp 4 diminished 7, 5 chord, sharp 5 diminished 7 or flat 6 diminished 7, and then the 6 chord. So the chord substitution is what allows you to get notes that aren't in the key. So because this is a chromatic run and the major scale doesn't have a bunch of notes together like this, there must be notes that aren't from the key. And the way that this is achieved in this case is by playing 2 of the notes from a diminished 7th chord. So that's one example of the chord substitution in this song. So when he's at the 6th chord like this, he just descends the bass note 1 fret. So you can think of that as another chord, and you can think of that as this chord. So here's the 4 chord, here's the 5 chord. If you take the 5 chord and move up 1 fret, you can call that a sharp 5 chord or a flat 6 chord. You can think of that as what he's playing with these 2 notes. So 6 chord, flat 6 chord. So that's another substitution, another chord that is not in the key of G major. Then he plays the 5 chord again, that sharp 4 diminished chord, diminished 7th chord again, and then the 4 chord. And then he descends the high note instead of the low note. And you can think of this as going from the 4 chord, which is a C major chord, to a 4 minor chord, which is a C minor chord. It has a sound that you'll hear in songs. It's kind of like going sad or something, you know, a chord. So that's another example of a chord substitution in this song, the minor 4 chord. So in just this section of the song, we have quite a few substitutions going on. 4 chord, sharp 4 diminished 7th chord, 5 chord, sharp 5 diminished 7th chord, 6 chord, flat 6 chord, 5 chord, sharp 4 diminished 7th chord, 4 chord, minor 4 chord. The next music idea that we'll talk about is a 2-5-1 turnaround. So in the key of G, the 2 chord is A minor, the 5 chord is D, D major or D7, and then the 1 chord is back to G. So a 2-5-1 turnaround diatonically using just the notes from the scale would be A minor, D, G. So what Paul McCartney does is performs a chord substitution on the A. Instead of an A minor chord, he plays an A7 chord. And so this is called a secondary dominant. It's changing a chord that would normally be minor in the key to a major or dominant 7 chord. So instead of G1, 2, 5, 1, so G, A minor, instead of that he plays G, A7, D7, G. So back to the 1. So it's 1, 2, 5, 1. And one of the reasons he does this is because if you look at the starting from these two notes, which can be thought of as B minor, right, from the we played earlier, but because there's only two notes, you can look at these notes differently, in different ways. These are also two notes that are in a G chord. So you can think of this as the 1 chord, and then the 2 chord is the A7, the 5 chord is the D7, and the 1 chord again is the G. So one of the things that you get by changing that A minor chord to an A7 chord, that secondary dominant, you get a note that's not in the key. So what that allows is for a nice chromatic descending. So if you listen to the song, oops, do it again. You get that nice. So 1, 2, 5, 1. The next music idea we're going to talk about is key changes. So in Blackbird, throughout most of the song, you're in the key of G major, and the melody actually never really changes out of the key of G major. But during the chorus, he changes from G major to F major. And the way that he does that is really quite simple and very clever. So instead of playing, so in the key of G, here's the 1, 7, 6, 5, right? So that's the key of G. So if this is the 1 in the key of G, if we go down 2 frets, that's the 1 in the key of F. So, but you still visualize that same pattern. 1, 7, 6, 5. You can hear the chords of the chorus as you play. So coming out of the 2, 5, 1 turnaround, he's at the 1, the G, and then he goes to this F chord and plays the pattern. So the harmony has changed from G major to F major, but it's not too difficult for us because all we have to do is visualize that same progression that was here in G down 2 frets. So there he has changed from the key of G major in the harmony to the key of F major in the harmony. But he's going to be going back to the same beginning later in the song, so he's going to be back to the key of G major. So the way that he gets back to the key of G major is also quite clever. So he's coming down in F, and here these two notes are not from the key of G major. You have a B flat note in the bass, and this is the 4 chord in the key of F. But what we did have earlier in the song were these two notes, which was the 3, 1, 2, 3 from the series. So there's really only one note different, and so he goes from this B flat chord to the A7 just as he did earlier in the 2-5-1 turnaround, and then he just continues the 2-5-1 turnaround. So just this one note different still sounds fine when you go to the A and then the D7, and boom, you're back to the G major. So it's a really clever way to change from the key of F back to the key of G. I should mention, moving to the key of F sounds fine because he was on the G chord earlier. The G chord, if you play a G chord, you can play an F, and it's going to sound okay in many cases because those are two of the chords from the key of C. So you have the 5 chord from the key of C major, as well as the 4 chord. So going from a G to an F is something that our ears are very used to hearing. So in the song, he's playing the G and then to the F. And that just works, beautifully. The last music idea we're going to talk about is a blues melody over the 2-5-1 turnaround coming out of the chorus. So the chorus is in F, the harmony is in F. Actually, the melody notes of the chorus are a C note and a G note, which are in the key of G. Those are notes in the key of G. So you can think of this song as actually the harmony or the chords changing to the key of F, and then the melody staying in the key of G, which is a really neat mixing of music ideas. So over the 2-5-1 turnaround coming out of the chorus, you have this A7, D7, and G. So there's, especially with the A7, there's notes, well, only with the A7, there's notes that are not in the key of G. So to try to sing a melody over that using notes from the key of G, you might have some conflicts, and because some of the notes are not in the key that are being played. So in blues music, it's very common to mix major and minor concepts. In fact, that's what I think of blues as, is a mixture of major and minor. So instead of playing notes from the G major scale over the melody, or I should say singing a melody using notes of the G major scale, what he's doing is kind of considering this blues because it's a 2-5-1 turnaround with a secondary dominant. So there's some notes that are not in the key of G major. So it's common in blues to play major chords or dominant chords and a minor pentatonic melody. So we're in the key of G major, but if we're going to play a G minor pentatonic scale. So that's just a form 1 of a minor pentatonic, G minor pentatonic scale. So those are the melody notes that Paul McCartney is using in that 2-5-1 turnaround. So backwards, the scale looks like this. You can almost hear the melody right there, right? So he's singing a G minor pentatonic melody over that 2-5-1 turnaround. So it's basically injecting blues into the song. You have the 1 note and then this flat 7, which is not a note from the G major scale, the 5, the 4, and then a flat 3. That's a blue note. And back to the 1. So the Beatles had, many music ideas to use in their songs. And in Blackbird, he's using blues ideas in addition to some of the other things, some of the classical ideas like the voices of classical and counterpoint. So that's an overview of some of the music ideas in Blackbird. You probably didn't understand every word in this video, and that's to be expected because there's really a lot to the song. There's a lot of great ideas combined to make a great song. So if you go to myguitarlessons.com, we step you right through each of these ideas, and we track your progress so that you really will learn what you're doing as you're playing, and you'll be able to play the song very well. The music ideas that are in this song are in many other songs as well. So once you learn the basics of the music idea, it applies to your playing other songs also. So good luck with understanding and playing the music ideas in the song. And I find that the more I understand, the more I appreciate it. It's not like once you learn more about the song, you lose your appreciation of it. It's just the opposite for me. I am amazed at how great Blackbird is as a song. And so hopefully as you understand these ideas better, your appreciation of the song will grow as well.